Thank you.
Ready? All right, welcome to the meeting and please rise and join Rachel in leading the Pledge of Allegiance
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for those who will see this streaming. This is the February 21st, 2024 meeting of the Toledo Planning Commission. I believe we have a quorum. And are there other business items you'd like to add to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would like to add another item under other business, I guess, is just an update on today's Plan Growth Committee meeting.
Very
That's
good.
the appropriate spot to add it.
I think so. Was there something else that you were going to bring up?
I also have a correction to the meeting minutes before you adopt those, but I was going to try to.
Okay, why don't we go to the consent agenda then and get a motion to accept the consent agenda, the meeting minutes of Business Plaza.
I will make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
And I will second.
Discussion, sir.
So I just had one clarification, under the meeting minutes, I'm cited as saying that a code amendment for the discussion that we had on the rental taxes and other things would have to go to Commerce, and for SEPA, that only relates to it if it's a land use code. So if it's a zoning code change or something else, the administrative codes for the taxes don't have to go through that process. So I know we talked about a lot of things and I may have been unclear about my presentation, but I just wanted to clarify that in the minutes.
Okay. Any other discussion? No, sir.
I do have discussion on the subject, but I believe we have it later in the.
Yes.
This is just a discussion on the motion to, on the consent agenda.
So on that, no discussion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have commission reports. Aye.
It's always optional.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Nor do I. Public hearing, none, new business. Is that where you would like to go over something else? Mr. Johnson?
I can add it there if you like, Chair.
Sure.
Just make the change to the meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. Today we had a great discussion. The Lewis County Planned Growth Committee meets monthly, coincidentally on the afternoons before your planning commission meetings. Today in that meeting, we talked about the periodic update, and this is the 2025 comp plan update that all the communities in Lewis County, as well as other counties throughout the state, are going through at the same time. This is an update to your comprehensive plan, which is your vision document. It doesn't directly affect zoning or land use, but it sets the policies that are implemented by zoning and land use. So after you get done with your comp plan update, you have to go through and update your zoning codes or do that in conjunction with your comp plan update. Today, we talked about the schedule. The grant funding from Commerce still hasn't been open to a lot of communities, although we can start to accrue expenses as of July of last year. Commerce hadn't yet issued the award letters, so cities can't submit reimbursement for that yet. They started doing that over the last month, and a number of communities haven't received that information yet. Toledo being one of those. So we've been awarded the grant. We've submitted the materials for the grant, but they haven't given us the contract that allows us to submit for reimbursement yet. So we haven't been spending money on it. The grant deliverables are due now. I mean, the first wave of funding has to be spent by the end of June. So half of our award has to be spent by then. So the question came up in the discussion today was, well, what do we do? And it's likely that Commerce is going to extend the deliverables deadline past that date. But they themselves are bound by a year and fiscal year in June, so they can't extend the award date. So we still haven't been able to draw on those funds yet, and we've been cautious about city reserves, so we haven't spent the funds yet. We haven't hired the consultant team to go out and do the work and do all the presentations. So I did call and have a conversation with our representative at the Department of Commerce today, and she noted that we were, it didn't look like we had submitted the application materials, so I forwarded her the application that we submitted. She said she'd process that quickly, so we should be able to move through that and get that paperwork in place probably within the next 4 weeks or so, I guess, giving Commerce a turnaround time on that for other communities. So that money part is in the fix. The one thing that the county sprung on us today is that they need to have their urban growth areas, their land use analysis, and their components done in the next 60 days. So they were asking the cities if we could get them our land analysis within the next 30 days. So not only identifying what we have so far is we got approval from the county and they accepted our population growth projections, which we all talked about months and months ago. And that was our first piece that was due to the county. The next piece that's based on that is how much land do you need to grow and where do you want to grow? I've heard in the community that the goal is to grow out along the 505 corridor out as much as we can towards the I-5 junction. Without any specific properties being identified or discussion, it's just, that's my general sense. But that is the next thing we have to get to the county, and we have to get to that within the next 30 to 40 days. They still are going to get us some more information this week or beginning of next. But that will mean that at the next planning commission meeting next month, where I won't be here, I'll be away on vacation during your special planning committee, which I thought was fine. We didn't have anything on the agenda, but now it looks like you all want to be looking at that and discussing it and giving me input so that I can finalize that and get that done probably before I return, or you'll be looking at the draft that I submitted. What the county's asking for is a director's level, so something that the planning director might send off to council to review. They said that's fine for this step, but we have to do all the number crunching to figure out how many people can we house within our existing city limits and with our existing urban growth area. We compare that then to our population projection, and then we look at how much more land do we need. And as we look at the land that we need, we subtract off things like, well, there's going to be a future roadway there, or this is the percentage of that area that's going to be used for future roadways. These are the areas that are critical areas and are constrained by environmental constraints, so we can't build on those. So it allows us to, you know, if we need 30 more acres of land, we might take in 50 just to account for all the infrastructure and environmental constraints that may be there. It depends on the property. We have to do the modeling and the math to show it. But within the next month, we'll be doing that. And at your next planning commission meeting, you'll either see the draft that has gone to the county as the director's recommendation, or the one that is soon to go to the county. So that'll be something you can look forward to. But that was the main discussion today, is about that and about the timing. There's a whole capital facilities analysis that has to go on to be able to support that. You can't just grow in an area that you can't get water and sewer to.
Right.
You can't grow in an area that you can't provide policing services to, fire services, you know, any of the urban services that if you can't provide them, then you can't grow. You're limited by that constraint, and you're only allowed to grow in the amount that you need to serve the population that you've identified. There's different ways that we'll interject. There's market factors for people that don't want to sell. So you can put percentages in there that kind of increase the acreage that you're bringing in to account for those things. But they all have to be part of that document and part of that model when we send it off to the county. So we're a little bit behind in that one. I wish I would have known that deadline was just presented to us today. And I wasn't aware of that before today's meeting. So there wasn't an opportunity to bring you all a bunch of information on that. But you will see something on that, including an area identified for urban growth expansion.
So our urban growth area, as we plan it forward will be X% larger than our previous urban growth area because of our population growth? In it, our projected population growth will be larger, so therefore the UGA will be larger? Is that what I understood, or?
That's correct.
Okay,
Generally,
Yeah.
it's
interesting,
it's an exponential growth based on your previous
Right.
projection.
right,
I mean, it's not it's a very large growth. Like, look up the numbers if you're, I haven't.
no, I just
But-
conceptually, I was asking.
But I think that you were, you were projecting, like a 2 or 3-fold because of your small population of the
Yeah.
city now. I mean, it's a significant change. It's multiple.
If I recall, we were projecting an additional 1,700 plus.
New homes.
I thought it was
People,
population
yeah, people,
increase.
those people,
I thought it
right?
was population increase.
I can answer that question.
And we need to take a look at the 2 subdivisions we have
So those.
coming up.
Those are
One-
used property. We're projecting out past them. So assuming those subdivisions, that came out of our consumed land. When we did our analysis.
Right.
We said, yes, our population has grown on this trend, and we used that to establish the trend on which we were growing.
Right,
But we also would subtract that out and not identify that population as coming out of the population served. That one only
That makes
supported the projected growth.
Right.
But because we hadn't done the math to show how that projected growth was gonna be housed, Cowlitz Meadows will be before all that. It'll come out of it as, it'll show as developed property in the model, so it's not available for development anymore. And the population that's housed there will still need to be housed someplace else in our identified population.
and so we'll take the populations away from Jolma as well, in anticipation of their development,
They don't have an approved development,
right?
they just have pending annexation.
So that would be part of our projection, and,
That land is still in your inventory until you approve a development application.
Interesting.
okay, so we need to find land that will take care of the rest of the population projections that we made.
Correct, and it was my understanding that, let's see.
My only concern, Todd, is that they're asking for this within the next 30 days. And we don't meet again for the next 30 days.
That was my concern too.
And council will have 2 meetings before we come back together again. And I'm just not wondering if it shouldn't be council that's holding a workshop to determine, because they do have the ultimate say on which direction our urban growth goes, that your staff report wouldn't be better directed to them so they can act on it in a timely manner than waiting for us to look at it and then submit it to council, which wouldn't see it again for another 2 weeks.
Right,
Well, and of course, we haven't even developed any of this information.
Right.
I have in my head from.
And no dimes,
conversations-
no dimes to spend to do it.
And no dimes to spend to do it. The funding still isn't there. So we need to get started on the work. So I did talk to the mayor today and I told her, I said, I'm gonna get started on this. So there's a little bit of work that's gonna happen to set up some of the GIS modeling that I need in order to create the numbers and create the areas. But there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before we can do this. I'm really concerned with the timeline that we've been given to do that, because part of our issue is that we only have. We only have 1 residential zone and 1, commercial industrial zone, so we need. What the state is now mandating is that there are no more single-family residential zones. You have to allow at least 3 dwelling units on every parcel that's of a certain size in your city limits. So they're expecting us to account for all of that in the modeling that we're doing that shows, okay, here's what we can house inside of our existing city limits. They're expecting us to come up with some assumption about zoning. And I can use some of the basic state inputs for that, which is what I'm going to have to do. But the recommendation that I will make and that I have made to both you and council is you need more than 1 residential zone. You need more than 1 commercial zone. You probably need a couple of different industrial zones.
On a retail.
As you continue to grow, you're going to need those. And then, the idea too, is to what populations right now, the state would say the best place for multifamily development is right here downtown. Well, that is not what I've heard from this community. I've heard.
Correct.
I've heard a lot of, when we had a multifamily development application come in, I heard very clearly this community does not want that here. We don't mind that being elsewhere around the perimeter or up in the hills, but we don't want that here. So that's gonna be a community discussion that we're going to have throughout that process. So for them to ask us to make assumptions now, we're gonna have to make them very broadly and very generally. We're not gonna be able to, we have to say within the city, we're gonna achieve this density generally without talking about zoning or where.
Yeah, it confuses me that the state looks at an issue from a metropolis standpoint without regards to the rural standing of small communities.
That is, I think every community's complaint is these are top-down mandates that tell us how we must grow. And it's not based on our community's vision, and that has been a very vocal argument against it, but yet the state keeps adopting new laws and legislation that say cities must. And we can't violate that.
What's the next round if we were to miss this deadline of submitting our new UGA? Like when would be the next time that we could have a chance to submit our UGA?
So
It's for the grant.
I
yeah.
don't wanna call it an ultimatum, but I kinda do. So, the ultimatum we were given today was either the county will tell you where your growth is,
Hmm.
and we'll do that planning work because it is the county's burden. The county actually sets your UGA.
Right.
They're given the authority under state law to tell you where you're going to grow. Lewis County has historically not done that. They've let the cities tell them where they're going to grow, and then the county jumps on board and supports that.
Okay,
So the option that we were given today is the county will do it. Or if you can get us your stuff in 30 days, then you can do it. What do you want to do? So we voted for, we'll get you our stuff in 30 days.
But we have to have that in order to get the grant.
No.
No.
This is what we have to do as one of the elements in the process. The grant, we're done. We've got the grant.
Okay,
So the grant has been awarded. It's the only thing that we need to do now is just wait for that paperwork. to
Oh, okay. I thought they were-
Well, now the
These
cat,
two conversations aren't linked. That was an update on the funding, and but they are kind of linked because the reason that we haven't gotten started on this sooner is because we haven't had the funding.
right.
let me ask you this, the county does allow us to go back and actually change or ask for a change to our UGA based on our vision of development. I've seen it in other communities. Whether a piece of land they put in the UGA is undevelopable for some reason, is too hard to get the services to, so they'll exchange land with you for something that more fits your mold of where you're going. Chehalis did that, did it not?
Chehalis hasn't done any land swaps, but they've done boundary expansions.
So,
This year, the city of Centralia will be proposing a land swap. They're actually removing it from their UGA. And we've talked about that too. There might be a couple of parcels who want to take out to add others.
yeah, I'm just wondering if, is it that deadly to our intended expansion hopes for the city to allow the county to do that?
Well, we won't get what we want where we want it, and today we voted in favor of supplying them with the information. I did ask,
I'm a little bit nonplussed though, because I'm not sure I know where we want to go. Do we?
I know generally what I've heard you want to do, and that is what I propose. What I asked the county today is because it's only 30 days, I don't have time to get the noticing. I'll get this to council. My planning commission is not going to meet again for another 30 days. So it's not likely I'm going to get very much community input into this decision, if any at all. You're asking me for a planning director or planner's interpretation as to where this goes. What happens if I get in front of council and I get it wrong? Can I change it? And they said, yes, you can until June. So we'll have an opportunity, but they're not looking, they don't want us to do a holistic change. What I'm maybe asking for input in this discussion is, it sounds to me like I want to look at properties that will be reaching out along the infrastructure that we have for existing transportation, which is the 505 corridor out to I-5. And that is what I believe I've heard from this community about. This is our primary goal, to try to reach out and get that as much as we can. If we can get that junction, great, or if we can get a piece of that junction. The city of Napavine's already got the junction, and they have even one property on this side of it in their UGA already.
Now, we're asking the contractors and developers to spend quite a bit of money to run water up Toledo Vader Road, however.
That's true.
And once it gets up there with a pumping station that's gonna be required and a water tower that's gonna be required. Does it not make sense to make further expansion on that along those lines as well?
Well, I mean,
Because adding to that infrastructure would be a lot easier than breaking ground on new infrastructure going up 505.
That's true, but there's not a lot of developable area out in that area. Unless we push the UGA south along that transportation corridor, or if we expand it out and then we assume that the whole new road networks will be built back through that section. So this way, you know, what I was thinking is sort of much the same. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ridgefield, Washington. They had a nice downtown, but
Yeah.
they were, you know, a mile and a half away from their freeway interchange. Well, what they did is they did a boundary expansion for their UGA, and they expanded their boundary in very much a stem-like fashion right along the state right of way.
They did.
And then they put a bulb out at the end around the junction. And then once they got into the UGA, then they annexed it. And then they developed that out because they wanted a junction district within their city to take advantage of the highway commerce that was going on.
Right.
And from what I've understood,
And I'm sure that we'd
This
like the
community,
same thing.
that's the same goal that we're after, is because once you can get that and get a little bit of property around that junction, you can attract a different type of user, and that type of user will have very little transportation or other impact on the downtown core.
Right.
You know, and that was the goal, and I'm kind of paralleling what I'm thinking this community might do to what that community did back in the day, and it wasn't without its challenges. But using that state infrastructure that's there for transportation is a great springboard, right? Because now we can have development on either side of that can connect up to that infrastructure and utilize what's there. We could do the same thing going south, but I just haven't heard that from the community that that's where they want to grow.
I'm thinking back to the last big meeting we had in, over at the school. And I think that's pretty much what we told them our intentions were, that based on our ability to move out 505 and take development that way, that we could use the benefits of that development to actually enhance our downtown core and give the present citizens some relief and some dollars to do some improvements in our downtown core that have been far too long neglected. And use it with a development that didn't actually encroach on them. So I agree with the way you're running that.
The other possibility is, I mean, you all could choose to hold a meeting before March 11th, when I go away on vacation. And we could talk about, I can try to have as much of the model prepared with some maps based on what I would put forward as a director's recommendation, and we could bring it to you all then. Certainly if I can, I mean, that it is difficult to set up. I mean, right now, your zoning map isn't in a digital format. You have it in a PDF format, but it's not something I can model or use in GIS. So we need to lay that over the top of other maps. We need to also get your future land use map put together, put in there. It's same as your zoning map, so it's not that difficult. But then we need to pull in a lot of data that from other sources too, for critical areas and infrastructure and roads. And then we need to run the base model numbers, and then we need to plug it all into a spreadsheet that we can work with and monkey with the assumptions.
And have it done yesterday.
And we need to have all that done in 30 days. You know, I'm guessing it's gonna take me probably 2 to 3 weeks to get that stuff all set up and done.
Do you have a calendar?
Yeah, right.
So if you wanted to, the other thing is like, it's a draft. And we could post that somewhere, or I could take it to council and get input that way.
Yes,
You all can't meet outside of a meeting. You can't provide me. input
No, we
They could have a
outside
workshop,
of this
right?
You
forum.
can have a workshop or you can have a special meeting as
You
well.
could have a workshop and give me input. This doesn't need to be and shouldn't be voted on yet, because it's too premature for us.
Well, I'm just looking at when the next council meeting is, which would be the
So it'll be
4th
the 4th and the 8th.
and the 18th.
So if you guys could
And
meet in there, then we could.
if
take-
we could meet in between those two, let's say Wednesday, the 13th, we could look at it.
I won't be here for the 13th.
Okay,
You all could.
you're gone the 11th?
and I'll be gone for the next plan. It's likely, kind of given the timeline, they said that we would have 30 days. Basically from Friday. To get them our results. So I think that.
And you're
looking at-
gone from when to when?
I'm gone from the 11th through the 22nd.
Well, that's only 28 days, so you'd be back.
I could be back in on the 26th, but that's too late for them. Because the deadline would put us, let's see, from the 23rd.
1, 2, 3, 4 is 28 days, and if the weekend
So
counts,
it's gonna have to be back to the county on the 15th or the 18th,
that doesn't compute to 30 days, does it?
doesn't it? So 7,
The 23rd is 7 days is the March 1st.
21, 15. 15 would be 28. The 19th would be 30 days of March.
If I'm reading this right, 15 is 21 days.
So we get 7 days from 23 to March 1st.
Right, then more,
Another 7 days from March 1st to March 8th. And then another 7 days to the 15th.
that'd be the 21st day. The 28th day would be the 22nd. And the 30th would actually fall on a Sunday.
21, 28, so it is the 26th, it looks like that we have to get that back to the county, or the 30th. So sometime that week of the 25th or the 29th is when we have to get it back to the county. If they get it to me on Friday, then it could be Friday the 29th.
But I'm thinking if we could hold a workshop if you could present something to the council on the 4th to let them know what's going on. And if we could get a special meeting workshop between us on the 13th, then go through that and make a presentation to council on the 25th or the 18th.
So your
And it-
hopefully scheduled meeting is,
That would be the 20th.
would be the 20th, yep.
So we would actually have a special meeting on the 13th. And that would give us a chance to go over it and get it to council on the 18th on their second meeting of the month.
But I think we want to take advantage of the flexibility of this being a director's recommendation, and if council formally adopts it, and then we want to change it, now it's less changeable. So there's that on our side too.
I understand.
Because this is coming together so quickly and without public involvement or input. That's the other thing that this whole process is built around, community engagement.
So you're gonna-
Make sure that when we're proposing a plan, the community's engaged in our long-range vision.
Right.
And we're not just throwing stuff together. So that was the other point that I made today is you've given us 30 days. That's no time for public engagement.
No,
But truly what they want is a staff recommendation at this point, and I agree, we need your input and planning commission's input into that. And it would be great to get a confirmation of what I think I know from council before I put something forward. But if I put something forward and you all haven't reviewed it yet, then we can change it because I can be wrong.
well,
the council
I'm not
never-
concerned about the council making a recommendation. If you needed us to look at something before it finally went to council, because you won't be there.
Yeah,
Um,
you could do that at your meeting on the 20th and still give me input.
right,
But I probably wouldn't take it to council before I send it to the county.
right, exactly.
I think your recommendation is good to go to council on March 4th and get input from council on where do we want to grow? What do we want to do? And have those general conversations. I think that's probably a good idea, but I also want to have a little bit of room to backpedal. And you can blame the consultant, right? Well, you got it wrong. We didn't want to grow there.
No, that's fine.
The council votes on it and says, yeah, you're right. That's where we're going. So,
I appreciate it staying at planning commission level so we can have the ability to dodge and sidestep if we need to.
sure.
So do we need to meet on the 13th?
I don't think it needs to be the 13th. I'm not gonna be doing much on it between the 13th and the 20th. So if you wanna look at it.
If you're not here, you won't be.
I probably won't be in a frame of mind to do anything with it between the 13th and the 20th. I'm usually in a different frame of mind.
Yeah, it should be.
I'm just as talkative, but on different.
Okay, so what will happen?
Meet on the 20th, and if I'm able to get information to you with a spreadsheet that shows the modeling with some descriptive text that talks about what it shows. And then a copy of a map that shows based on what I think I heard, and the problem is you're not gonna, I don't think you're gonna get all the land that you want. I think you're gonna have a very thin shoestring going out to the junction in order to get it. You're probably gonna be doing very much the same thing that Ridgefield was facing.
I think so too.
So.
I'm not opposed to that.
So I'm gonna build my first approach based on that, and then I'll take input from you at your meeting on the 20th, even though I won't be here, I'll get the record. I'll be able to make some quick revisions to that when I get back on the 22nd, and then I'll get that to the county then on the 26th.
Okay, so the meeting of the 4th for council, you go ahead and bring that up to them so they can discuss and confer with their general idea of which way they'd like you to go. We don't need to meet on the 13th. The council will meet on the 18th and be nowhere farther along than we were on the 4th.
The council probably won't hear it again on the 18th.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
And then on the 20th, we'll go over your proposal and give a nod so you can get it out to county.
yeah, and I can make any revisions or corrections or adjustments.
Say, yeah, the planning commissioner screwed up and they went to council and they said, not a chance.
Well, and then when this all comes back, and then we start to go through our process and we engage the public. If the public doesn't like what the planning.
When is the big meeting?
The 19th, I believe.
It is all my fault, and I'm trying to keep it in that camp, because there's not enough time to bring the right people.
Well,
into the city.
we have a big meeting going the 19th.
I don't like to, I don't
For
want
what?
to take one for the team just for
Yes.
the.
It is a citywide meeting
It's on the 19th,
of March.
yes.
So while you're on vacation, planning can stand up for 3 minutes under time watch. And give a kind of an explanation of where we're at and what our intentions are, and we can see if there's any real. Anybody raising their hand and saying, no, that doesn't work for us. You know, the last time I gave the talk was along the same lines you're talking, that we were gonna be able to develop outside city limit, outside of. You know, the present downtown core, and that development would not only aid in our growth and give us services money that we need so badly, but also. Stay away from transitioning the downtown inner core into something it doesn't want to be. And that seemed to go over pretty well. And I think if we touch on that again with the same basis, that they now push is coming to shove and we needed to let the county know. And it hasn't changed from where we thought before. We're still going to try to develop out towards Highway 5 along 505 with the same expected results, and I think we'll do well.
Okay, well, and that's always been the vision.
Yeah, that sounds good.
There's not enough money in the grant award to do all the public engagement that's required for that. When we talked about this previously, we've always talked about Toledo doing what they've always done. It's a grassroots effort for the public engagement. The trick to that is that we need documentation of those meetings to show who spoke or to show what topics were discussed. Not really who, but just to show that the community, if we have 7 members of the community there, then we need to say that. 7 residents of downtown, those things that are specific to, and that needs to be part of our record. So as long as we're keeping a record of those meetings and we are listening to those meetings and developing our outcomes based on them, as well as input from planning commission and council. There's a lot more process that should have gone on before this point. But there's not time to do it now, and the choice is to leave it up to the county, and
That's not gonna happen.
and we don't, that was not the option we voted for. So-
Right.
The other thing that you haven't mentioned is there are 2 property owners out that 505 corridor that are interested. in
Right.
Being part of that process. And I think maybe at the big meeting, that should be part of that presentation as well, is that we do have 2. you know,
Very large property.
Large landowners that are interested in being part of that expansion.
And I think that might help for the community visioning.
Right.
That is not a criteria that I can use. The fact that landowners want to be involved, ironically, is not something the state allows us to consider.
Interesting.
We have to show that it's in the best place with the least environmental impact that's most able to be served by utilities. You can end up with a whole group of people on this side of the city that says, we really want to be in the city, we want to be part of that community. And then the people over here say, we don't want to be in, but in fact, they have all the area that's least impacted, they have all the area that's adjacent to all the utilities. And so the state would say, you gotta grow in this area, even though these people don't wanna be in your city. And so it turns a little bit of a blind eye to the individual public voice, but it does try to capture the overall public consensus. If there's a public consensus that yes, our goal as a community is to annex a junction, to get out there so we can start to experience some of that economic development. And we can do that in a way that's served by utilities and less environmentally impactful. Those are the criteria that the state will recognize as being appropriate to review that under.
Well, I think there's a good reasoning behind the state's position on that, though, because there's every opportunity for collusion between public figures and private landowners to develop it a certain way at, you know, for whatever reasons, whether they're legal or not. And the state's attitude towards that is probably one of the main reasons they don't allow the interests of the particular parties to play a role.
Yes, that's true. So the other thing that we're gonna have to grapple with as a community that was hit on a little bit today is the legislation, changes in legislation that mandate higher densities and growth, especially within city cores and city limits. So that is something that is a requirement of the new law. And we're gonna have to address that in this process.
Well, we brought that up to, I think we brought that up to council briefly. I had a lunch with one of the council persons down in Arizona. I was on vacation, and apparently at one point in time they had done quite a bit of work, but I think this was back in the 90s on rezoning Toledo to match what the growth expectations and optimal uses were. And I don't know if anybody's been successful in researching or grabbing that, but I think council also lend a favorable ear to the fact that we probably need to get on and do that, because we're losing a lot of valuable retail space to residential, to commercial that's not producing anything retail. Because I think ultimately everyone would like to see a retail strip going down the main corridor through town. And we don't really have the zoning that allows for that.
Well, the good news is right now your residential zoning code, which is the focus of all the legislation, appears to be compliant. You allow all densities in the same one district that you have. So, I mean, that complies with that. But the downside to that is when you have a development that comes in that proposes a multifamily development in the downtown core, you're at the mercy of the developer to choose to do something different because your zoning code allows it.
Well, I mean, we were very lucky in that regard with K&R Homes, that they actually took the public's opinion to heart, because quite literally, he could have told us to pound salt and put up his 25-unit building if he wanted to.
Well, and that would have been not only consistent with your zoning code, but consistent with the legislation that's gone
Right.
through that encourages that.
So we need to rezone.
We need different zones in different places. We need to address the state laws, but we also need to most immediately figure out what capacities can we serve within our city limits based on some recognized population growth, and then also how are we going to project population growth outside of the city. So I've got to get to work on coming up with some ideas of what those are, and then I can share those with you as chair. We can't get input from everybody, but you can give me your input on those as I'm developing them. And then I'll take it to council on the board. I'll brief them on what's going on and talk to them about the general theories that I'm operating under. And then we'll develop a model that you can have a meeting on the 20th.
Well, I can maybe get one of the other council persons to speak, Eric possibly, to speak with me in the city meeting, or the mayor to.
That was on the
That's on the 19th.
19th. The day before your planning commission meeting. And that we shouldn't, if it's going to be used for input on this process, we should try to document the input that we receive somehow. So if it's people that are speaking at a public meeting, I don't know, are there meeting minutes for that meeting, or is
There really are not. Mike Morgan generally does, in fact, I haven't even seen, it's not like been in
There's usually
Toledo.
there's usually an agenda, which is just listing everyone that's speaking. But there's no videotaping or.
Or minutes.
Well, so the other thing that I've done when I've done, because we do open houses too. And open houses, we usually, put up maps, put eggs on boards, where do you want the city to grow? What properties do you think we should expand into in the future? Give them different colored pins, say this is the commercial, this is an industrial, and these are residential. If you were to pick a spot, everybody gets one set of pins and you get to pick a spot where they go, and then you look at the groupings of the pins. So that may be an area that we could put together a simple graphic that would do it. Note taking at a lot of the public open houses, because you don't want to be invasive and you want to get people to participate. So a lot of things that I have done before is I'll take notes and just document that I talked to someone and this is the general thing that they said, and that becomes the meeting record. And that way it's not invasive, it's not tied to somebody or an address or person, and they're allowed to talk and give their opinions, and they come out that way. So those are ways that we can get input at that meeting if you'd like, that are pretty low intensity for staffing and still qualify for public engagement.
The big community meeting is always, videotaped as well.
Mhm.
So,
Is it?
Yeah,
Well, so if there's that record, then that works fine. Then we can just take the input from the video and the audio, same as we do with other meetings.
Okay, any further on that?
That was a lot of great input, thank you.
that was a lot of good logistics, calendar wise too. Impressive.
Indeed. Okay, moving on to unfinished business, short-term rental recommendation to council. Status, Rachel, were you gonna try to come up with some kind of a head tax?
I did some research on it. It looks like it's actually something that we do through our own personal SAW account in business licensing. I could be wrong. But we're able to view the taxes on the back end, like when we're in our business license. So I'm actually gonna reach out to Kalama. I didn't even think of like the administrative side of it. All I was like, oh, how do I have to get it done? Which I'm sure it's just an ordinance we pass and where we file it. But then it was brought up today, well, yeah, we have to collect it, we have to account for it, it's gotta go in an account. So, yeah, I'll
But
reach out.
Airbnb not being, because they've been remitting taxes that they
Well, then,
say they're sending to Toledo.
So that's the hotel motel tax. But they're talking about the beds and heads.
well, we don't have a motel or a hotel.
We do
here.
have hotel motel.
There's a 2% tax that Airbnb currently charges.
Yeah, so it's the same tax that we have on our
And-
RV
and
park.
Also, they charge the sales and use tax.
Correct,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, the sales and use tax, I understand. I think what we're looking at on the Airbnb was like any motel where you have a head tax and occupancy tax.
So we do hotel motel tax and it's the same thing that we've got added on to our RV parks.
And which is what?
Percentage wise?
Yes,
I can go look it up real quick. I'm not.
because I think originally we had determined, we thought per 10%.
We did say that, yeah.
I was seeing that 10%. I don't know if you're aware that 10% will bring the total percent that a guest pays to about 18% on top of all the state taxes.
Yeah, I'm paying my VRBO in Wyoming for this summer, I'm paying 23%.
Yeah.
And sales taxes, head tax and the rest.
It's different areas have different various additional ones that they'll add on, like Seattle has a lot that they add on.
Seattle's exorbitant.
Yeah, it's like,
But their actual Airbnb tax is only like 5%.
so yeah, we're paying the hotel motel tax and excise taxes. So we're paying out. So what I'm saying is I'm thinking it's the same thing, but it's not added on our B&B.
Sounds like Daniel's just saying is that there is a percentage being charged to the.
Yeah, and I looked his up. Is it live right now?
But
On Airbnb?
Yeah.
Yeah,
but the tax that you're collecting now is from the RV park.
No. What I was
That's
saying is
not in
it's
city limits,
It's
though.
I think the hotel motel tax and the beds and heads taxes, it's two different things, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because that's what we're paying out on the RV park. We're paying that. In our excise taxes, that's what we pay out every month based
We're
off
paying-
what we get.
The RV park is outside the city limits, right?
No,
Oh, it's inside.
Yeah,
city
yeah.
limits.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's a.
I'm thinking it's what we get back from the treasurer. I'm sorry.
You get that from. the
Yeah,
treasurer.
yes.
So when you change the tax that planning commission was recommending proposing, that wouldn't change the tax on the RV park, or would it also increase their tax?
No, I don't think so.
There's.
Because it would just be in the ordinance. We would just
That's a good
specific.
point, that probably needs to be part of the recommendation that ultimately does go to council. Is the.
Because if
RV
it's the
park.
same tax, and now you're increasing from an 8% tax to an 18% tax on all your RV spaces, that could be significant.
Worth noting is that what it currently is, 8%?
Well, I was using your math.
Okay.
I know recommended was 10, and you said, well, with the state taxes already,
Right.
decreased, that would be 18, so.
Yeah, so right now, total taxes that a guest gets charged is about 9.8%.
Okay.
And that's including state sales and use tax. As well as city sales and use tax, and then I think it calculated out to about 2% short-term rental tax that. I don't know if Toledo actually has that, or if Airbnb is just making the assumption and charging it and remitting it to the city, but.
Well, they don't remit to the city at all. They would remit to the state, which would then come.
Remit to
bring it back
us,
down
yeah.
to the city.
Okay, that's how it works.
That's how most of those taxes are.
Yeah.
Unless the city adopts a specific tax themselves, but all those taxes are state, or taxes that are implemented through the state, so they're all paid by
yeah,
the state.
my understanding was that
Usually,
you paid a sales tax as part of the rental, and that went to the state. But the cities charged an occupancy tax, and that tax was for the benefit of the city.
yeah.
Yeah, and that tax is generally Seattle's is 5%. I haven't found anywhere in Lewis County that's above 2%. I know. I believe in Waco, Long Beach area charges like 3%.
But I wonder if that's a tax that is paid directly to the city, or if that's something that also goes through the state Department of Revenue.
Yeah, because we get and I think it's quarterly too. But the hotel motel tax comes in, and I could print a report. It's a small number, yeah.
Like under 1%. Yes.
Well, and like sales tax, so the sales tax that you pay at the register doesn't all go back to the community that you
Right.
spend it in. It goes up and you get back a portion of
Then we get
that.
back
Right.
a percentage of it.
So the same may be true for the taxes that are in place now. I mean, the city may get none or just a portion of those taxes with nothing.
That I don't know, yeah.
Sounds like.
But if the city adopts.
More
their
research,
own
yeah.
Tax increase on top of that, they say, no, we want 10% on these now. Then it would be an increase directly to the bottom line, as you pointed out. It would
Yeah.
take that.
Well, not to his
9%.
bottom line.
Well, not to my bottom line, but it would probably,
But it would be
I
direct.
imagine it would come close to killing the business in town, because. There's a lot of Airbnbs around that aren't subject to, city.
It's just a few blocks away outside city limits.
Yeah, so,
So either you'd have to discount, either the community owner would have to discount their rate to be competitive then with the taxes and fees of the outside. Or,
yeah, which I'm already at the margins, I pay the guests Airbnb fees for them.
Mhm.
In order to attract more guests, so.
It's very nice of you.
Well, the other consideration that I didn't cross my mind was, does this impact Camp Polson Parks reservations as well? Is this
So how do we isolate out the RV park, any potential motels or hotels that we have, and Airbnb fees
Don't know, see, that's.
by ordinance?
Yeah, that's.
I don't know.
But it
Okay,
seems
that's
like a
what
lot of
I'm-
work for just one Airbnb. at the
Well, I'm not
time.
trying to do it to him. I'm foreseeing the fact that we have no hotels or motels in town, and people want to come here and they fill up the RV park when it's done. I know you're not a fan.
Some residents in town, so then if you kick them all out, then you lose all your affordable housing in town where all those residents gonna live.
Well, he's the only one here in
I
town that's
know,
doing
but
that.
then you're also talking about other people coming in to town.
Well, the state is mandating that we allow people to build ADUs on their lots. And although I would admittedly say it's a pretty strong vote against it if you're gonna have to pay $200,000 to build yourself an Airbnb. It's possible to do that, and they can do that.
They can, I mean, right now, for sure, I don't think the market exists in town to support.
I don't think it does
That
right
many.
now either, but
Eventually, maybe, but
I think that was our point of our general discussion to begin with, is we realize we don't have an issue right now, but are we gonna have one later on down the line? And should we prepare for it?
yeah,
But it sounds like you have the latitude to allow Rachel to get.
Oh, yeah.
Her head
Yeah.
completely around, what is it that we're talking about? Are we talking about two taxes? What percentage threshold is reasonable? Is 10% reasonable? We don't know.
Well, and does that 10%, is it a city tax that goes directly to the city? Or is it one of those other taxes that bubbles up and trickles down?
Yeah, I can do more research on this and have something actually like written out with all of these answers
it's not
by
a
next
rush.
meeting, yeah.
It's not
Coming for you.
Well, that's A lot of fun, they'll be discussing the urban.
I hope
growth
not.
plan, bad numbers that we get.
Yeah. Can I just blame that on you two then?
He's got big shoulders.
Heavy as
Okay, so we're gonna table that for now, is that correct?
do.
Okay, other business, informational only. If you hadn't heard earlier, the two-year long fight to get some kind of traffic control out at the corner of Ramsey and 505 has been successful.
Mhm.
And the state is going to, as they put it, move it forward with an always stop. The mayor has reached out to them to find a timeline and has not gotten a response back. Quite surprisingly to me, there seems to be a lot of concern about whether people accept it or not, and then whether they're gonna run the light or not.
The log trucks are gonna blast through.
And they're gonna get cited, and after about the first or second one, they're not gonna do it anymore because they're gonna put their commercial licenses on risk. And nobody likes that. So you know what? I'd rather have them get stopped and ticketed than me have to jump out of the way of one of those log trucks when it comes rolling through here. And I know people on the council, and I know myself and other people that have come into the market describing how they dodge this car, dodge that car in that intersection because they don't slow down and they don't stop. So be that as may, it's coming.
no, that for a short window of time, that might make for some good city revenue.
Well, is that city revenue or state? 'Cause it's a state highway, so is it state patrol that makes those
But
tickets?
the ticket's being given within the city limits.
In the street, when the city street crosses the state highway, is that?
Right over the bridge, I think.
If a tree falls in the forest, then
Well, I mean,
nobody's
it's-
around to hear it.
It's city police giving the ticket, right? And
Yeah.
city's jurisdiction, so
It's city.
hopefully it's
city.
city.
That's city.
I think she would know better than me.
I don't know about taxes, but yeah, that's our revenue apparently, you know, it is.
Have you heard, are we writing citations
We
now?
are.
Because it goes to Winlock now, right?
Yeah, we've got probably $6,000 in tickets written right now.
Well. I don't think anyone intended it to be a revenue source, but
It's on. We've got a couple people in jail,
that's awesome.
felony warrants.
So Karen,
Goes across the city. right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I've got a bill right there. That really doesn't cost, or it ends up costing us, but. It's all right.
okay. I don't have anything else. Does anybody have anything else here for business wise?
Just a point of order, I'll be on vacation from March 11th through the 22nd, so I'll miss your next planning commission.
We have been made painfully aware of that.
But apparently not in your last meeting when I tried to announce it, so I'm sure I'm on the record this time.
Okay, we'll make sure you're on the record.
I've known about this for months, so there should be no surprise.
That's all right. I hope you enjoy yourself. You
Where you
work
going?
hard. Any public comment? You are the public.
Yeah, I understand that. I just come to listen.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ron.
Does the city have a plan for the dump?
The old dump,
I'm sorry?
yeah, right? Does the city have a plan for the dump? The old dump?
Dobosh used to talk to me about the dump. Is that where
The dump?
where the fire department used to light the cars on fire? Yeah.
Shouldn't that have been brought up yesterday?
It's gonna be brought up.
That, it would also be like something that would be like a cool place that people would always get off the freeway and like. It would be a good place to like decompress and like, you know. Look at the.
Are you talking about the 505 or the
506.
506.
But now it's the something highway, I don't know.
that park and ride that they use for a dump?
No.
No,
she's talking
it's-
Toledo Beta Road.
Highway, it's
Oh.
exit 60,
Okay,
so the city owns that dump. Right? It is the old city dump.
There's 17 acres.
but it's outside city limits, isn't
It
it?
Yes,
is
it
outside
is.
the city limits,
Yeah.
but it is the old city dump. And we also own, a bunch of trees out that way and acreages of trees out that way. And so I was wondering what the planning commission has for the dump, because I don't think the city has a plan for the dump.
Well, council hasn't approached the planning commission with a request that we look into it, so we have not looked into it. In
So-
fact, I will be quite honest and tell you, this is the first I've ever heard of the city
And the
dump.
citizen who just drives by the dump on her way over to Vader a lot and remembers going to the dump as a child and, thought, you know, it would be cool to have it open and a place to be a, tourist. I think, I don't know. it could be-
Tourist stop?
Yeah, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, sir.
so when you close the dump, you establish a reclamation plan.
Yes, you do.
That talks about how it's gonna be capped and filled and what it can be used for in the future and how long it's gonna sit in that stage and how it's gonna be tested and monitored. So somewhere there's a plan for the dump. I'd be happy to see if I can dig that up and forward it to you.
Cool.
And, but yeah, I mean, they're required to be filed, and when the dump is closed and decommissioned, there's a report
yes.
that goes that. talks
I've built
about-
several dumps and I've reclaimed one. But it was never a doubt that that was what was happening when it happened.
Well, there's always a reclamation plan when a dump closes.
Yes.
The plan may be to do nothing but just leave it covered in dirt, which is probably the case here.
Well, we
But
made a
also
lake.
In that there's that monitoring period that it has to, you know, they produce gases and horrible things that are
Mhm,
not pleasant for people and humans. And animals, so they have a plan that says, this is what you do, this is how long you have to watch it for. And then once you're done with that period, then you can potentially do something different with it. But I can look and see if there's a reclamation plan or if there's a file on the dump in the city file, you probably have the reclamation plan.
I will look tomorrow.
But I can, if you don't have it, then I can contact, the state agencies, Ecology will have a copy of your reclamation plan.
It's a.
What's it
cool
called? The
place.
rec-
It's a lot of, concrete,
what is it called? The plan?
They would, bring down their, trucks and then you just dump your stuff into it and then they drive it away. But it's just a big neat area and it has the potential to be pretty cool.
I'm gonna go out there tomorrow. Yeah. I'll go out there tomorrow and look at it. Dobosh used to always talk to me about it, but it was like a long time ago. I forget why he was talking to me about that, but
I did the survey work out there.
Yeah.
he said
County was
exit 60.
involved in setting those up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, if it's in the county, the interesting thing is that even though the city owns it, the county would do the permitting for it, so.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
Well, give us something fun to do.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Any other comment? Then I will hear an motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Any second?
I will second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye,
Aye,
opposed? We are adjourned.
on the way to the tourist dump.
You know, talk about a dump, and you guys say, well, that's exciting. You're not talking about growth management.